It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical Mains and Duts. I'm your host, Mains. My colleague in a danger zone in Rainford, Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
Very, very, very ordinary, sir.
That's excellent. That's what we like to hear. That's what we hear. Ordinary's better than rubbish, I guess.
It can be. It has been suggested.
It obviously has. It obviously has. Big week of football last week, Dutton. Lots of overtimes, which the NFL seems to be loving. I scored more points in DFS than I've scored in a long time. However, the guy I faced scored over 200, which is a pretty spectacular effort on his part. Bravo to him. Hats off. And also steering normal fantasy playoff irrelevance in the face at 1 and 3.
Well, it was something of a throwback Sunday for myself, as it was the first time that I have literally thrown something after an Eagles game. In this case, it was my Eagles jersey that I'd been wearing throughout it. I thought, as they were playing the Titans, I wore my alternate Reggie White jersey. It was the first time I've worn it while watching a game, and probably be the last. As to quote mothers, everywhere, I wasn't angry. I was just disappointed. I don't mind getting beat, but the manner of defeat pissed me off.
Yeah, I think as we've mentioned before, I'm not 100% sure that you're allowed as Super Bowl champions to get mad because of that run last year. But there you go.
Yeah,
but you can still be disappointed, absolutely. Normal fare this week, Dutton. We're going to plug into the mains. We're going to discuss one of the outcomes of one of the possible outcomes of an NFL game and why America is scared of it. Then we're going to it's the quarter poll. We're already quarter the way through the season, so I thought we'd do some awards. We're going to look at MVP. We're going to look at Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and Coach of the Year. I expect some unanimous decisions by me and you, but we'll see. Got Fancy Loser and Fancy Darling, and then we'll get on with our DFS teams of the week. Make sense?
Sounds good.
Let's do it, and let's start by plugging into the mains. Dutton.
Still no sound drop, no?
No, I understand. Text spaslic in that world. Trying to fit the time in to come up with the rundowns bad enough. Never mind trying to come up with the sounds.
You just don't care anymore, do you? Just mailing this in once a week.
Mailing it in, yeah. Whether America likes it or not, there are 3 possible results of an NFL game: a win, a loss, and a tie. And I know that Americans seems to suggest that drawing is like kissing your sister. But what I would like to state to those people is, believe you me, it's better than getting beat. So I know he's your former offensive coordinator, Neil, but I'm not 100% sure of the logic of going for it with that play call in Indianapolis.
I criticise the play call. I don't criticise the strategy. So I don't mind what he was trying to do. I just have an issue with how he tried to get there, personally. As people are saying, excuse me, cleverer people than myself, at 4-4, you want a nice, safe play. That's you don't want to be trying to break out the Philly special at that stage of the game in those surroundings. You want a good, safe play that will get you the yards you want. Or if it doesn't, we'll take off as much time as possible. So a running play, a short passing play. If the Colts had converted against the Texans, obviously that's who we're talking about, and had gone on to win, Frank Reich is a genius because of how aggressive he is. Frank Reich is being laughed at by some people because it was a bad play call, and then his defence, which had been good first 3 weeks of the season but was gashed against the Texans, gave up 2 chunk plays in a row to put the Texans back in position to win the game. If the defence could do their job, you can overcome however bad a play call it was on offence. I have no issue with the going for it because I know losses, draws, essentially ties, are not as bad as losing. but they're not worth anything unless someone else in your division or conference also ties and it comes up later in the season and that half game is an eliminator. I don't think it counts. It doesn't count.
It does if you beat all your division rivals and therefore you've got an extra tie compared to their losses. It's basic math. Like it's not difficult.
Basic what?
Maths.
You left off an S the first time you said it.
Because we're talking American sports, we're talking in an American way. I don't understand why people can't understand that 8, 7, and 1 is better than 8 and 8. It literally is. That's kind of how it works. So, yes, I just look and think you gave, as you said, it's probably a play call situation, but you gave the Houston Texans an opportunity to still be in the division and still win the game when they wouldn't have been with a tie when you'd already won.
Especially earlier, actually it wasn't it, earlier the day, another AFC South coach passed up a difficult field goal on 4th and 2 to go for the win. Now I ask you again, if Mike Vrabel, if he dialed up, or Matt LaFleur had dialed up, I don't know, a triple handoff reverse, and it had fallen short, and the Eagles close out and win. Mike Vrabel and Matt LaFleur looked like idiots.
Yeah,
was coaches make decisions, players make plays.
Yeah, I guess so. I just look and think that he's got to go for it in that situation. He doesn't. He did, okay, fair enough, but he doesn't have to go for it there. That's not the case, because a tie is a feasible result. Like, it's not something that isn't feasible.
I think what it is, it's a disappointing outcome this early in the season, but as someone put, I can't remember who it was, someone put it that they've lost the battle, but down the line they'll win the war because their players now know that the coach is going to go for it, he's going to be aggressive. Compare it to the other prat in the AFC who, instead of embracing analytics, said, I didn't want to push our luck. Why is Hugh Jackson still employed by an NFL franchise, let alone as a head coach? Well, the man is an absolute muppet. He shouldn't be allowed to speak to people.
I think the issue is as well is he actually hired by an NFL franchise? They've won 2 games in the past 3 years or something. So it's not necessarily
adequate replacement level coaching. So who's the most blah head coach in the NFL? The most, he's all right, he's not great, tell me he's not great.
It's probably my head coach, isn't it?
Put Jay Gruden in charge of the Cleveland Browns, they're 4-0.
Well, they're definitely, I think he definitely would have cost them one of the games somehow. Which one it is, I don't really know, but he definitely would have cost them one of them. But yeah, they'd have a winning record, yeah.
Yeah. The man's a muppet. Won't trust analytics, but trusts his ample gut.
Well, yeah, old school in a bad way. So Dutton, as we said, week 4 done. So that means we're a quarter of the way through the season. So we thought we'd give you our thoughts on who we believe are the leaders in the clubhouse, so to speak, in terms of the major awards. So, Dutton, I'm going to go to you first. Who is your most valuable player?
My most valuable player is Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Do you need to say, are you going to say why, or are you just going to... I mean, you don't need to, because people have watched the game and you can kind of understand why.
It's a perfect confluence of player and system. It's one of those things that a player has landed on a team that are adopting a system that may well have been put in place specifically for him. Now, I'm not comparing him or this team to Kurt Warner, the greatest show on turf, but that's the last time I can think of something like this, the perfect storm of player and system. Andy Reid, who we have criticised through this medium, I have criticised for large portions of the last 20 years. My God, the man has literally said, Joe, everything that I learned over a course of a 30-year coaching career, I'm going to change it. I'm going to add things to it because I'll make it better. Their offense is literally, I saw, it didn't work. It led to a botched snap, so it was slight miscommunication. At one stage against the Broncos on Monday night, they had 4 shifts before a play had run. 4 players starting on one position of the field moved before the snap of the ball. Obviously, it was legal. They weren't all moving at the same time. I don't mean that. It's not the best penalty call of the week, false start, everybody but the centre for the Seahawks. He is literally, he's moving people around. He's got funky formations. Patrick Mahomes, as we've said, his arm is actually banned by the Geneva Convention as a weapon of mass destruction. But his left arm is just as efficient, it would seem, in very, very tight windows.
I think we need to remember that as we speak right now, Patrick Mahomes has more completions with his left arm than he has interceptions with his right.
Yeah, and also the stat that I couldn't believe, the only Kansas City Chief quarterback who has won at least 2 games at Denver was Len Dawson. They play Denver every year.
Twice. Oh no, so they play him once. Sorry, did he play him? Yeah, sorry, at Mile High. Apologies. Yeah, he's won there twice, and he's played 5 games in his NFL.
Played 5 games, 4 on the road, 2 of them in Denver. He's won them both. It just goes to show, though, that there's historically, if you look back through history, there's a whole litany of Pittsburgh native quarterbacks that the Steelers either didn't draft or they did have on their roster and they let go. Like Johnny Unitas, they didn't draft Dan Marino. I'd have to have a look at this, but I don't know if the Chiefs have ever had a better quarterback who they drafted themselves, because they didn't draft Len Dawson.
No, I don't think they have. I think that's. I think I can answer that question even at 5 games, and it's no. My MVP isn't Patrick Mahomes. We will come on to him later. My MVP is Jared Goff. I'm going to give you a stat. That kind of sums up almost a reason for my coach of the year. Spoiler alert, it's Sean McVay. Jared Goff is averaging 13.3 yards per attempt on play-action passes this season, completing 37 of 53 for 707 yards and 3 touchdowns in 4 games. 6 teams in the NFL finished the whole of the 2017 season with less than 700 yards on play-action passes. I don't know if you remember, but someone drafted him really high in the draft. Then he was rubbish because his coach was rubbish and he had a bad scheme. He now has an excellent scheme. He has good talent around him, but he is playing, in my opinion, better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes. Although Patrick Mahomes is playing better offense.
I see what you mean. It should be pointed out as well that Jared Goff has an 8-to-1 touchdown-interception ratio over his last 2 games against the Chargers and the Vikings. Now, at the start of the season, I think most people would have said they're going to be 2 pretty damn good defences. So the criticism on Goff last season was against the higher competition, he wasn't as good. Well, he's putting those myths to bed. I mean, put it this way, what the Rams did to Anthony Barr in coverage last Thursday was tantamount to bullying.
Well, I mean, their scheme is next level unreal. Like, they're light years ahead. When you look at some teams who can't get out of their own way, you watch that Jacksonville game against Tennessee, week 3 that finishes 9-7. Like a Sean McVay playbook that has been thrown away, set on fire, and then pieced back together could get more than 9 points in the game. It's just crazy. So for me, it's Jared Goff. Who's your offensive player of the year, Neil?
My offensive player of the year is Alvin Kamara, because Drew Brees is putting up spectacular numbers because the Saints are not the force on defense they were last year. Michael Thomas is putting up incredible numbers as a receiver, but that offense goes through Alvin Kamara. Much in the same way, for the second time in this category, I'm going to harken back to the Rams of 99 to 2001. They went through Marshall Faulk.
Yeah,
he's doing most of his damage as a receiver. But then last week against the Giants, they decided, we should probably run him a bit more, and then he tore them to pieces. I don't see how you could stop him.
Well, I think what we're going to find really interesting is that nobody is, apart from Sean Payton, He's going to
He's
stop
the only
him
one who
by
can stop him.
he's going to stop him by giving him half of the carries and touches that he had in the first 4 games. Because now they can just bring back, Mark Ingram. Hard life for some teams, obviously.
I just wonder how many carries for 2 to 3 yards Ingram gets given before they decide to get him off the field.
More than you will think. Believe you me. So my offensive player of the year is Patrick Mahomes. As I said, he is offense. But I think we were talking about one difference, say, between the Goff at MVP level and Mahomes, and maybe a case for you on Mahomes of MVP. That the Chiefs have needed Mahomes to play like this to win games. So Mahomes might have just had one of the most impressive 4-game stretches ever, and they've won games by 10, 5, 11, and 4. So obviously we understand that the Chiefs' defense is total and utter garbage. So the offense that Mahomes is putting up is next level, and actually only just good enough to get over the fact that the defense is so bad.
The stat that I love is the Chiefs are allowing the most air yards per completion, but are also allowing the most yards after the catch. Jesus Christ, where are the defenders? So you're not covering them, and then you don't bother tackling them afterwards.
Brilliant, isn't it?
You have got 11 players on the field, right? The thing is that it's just, as Evan Silver points out on Twitter, that in his worst game of the year, Patrick Mahomes won in Denver for the second time, scored a rushing touchdown, and led his team back from a 10-point deficit. As I pointed out, on my worst day in work, I broke a printer, spilled coffee on the floor, and called my supervisor Dad. Exactly. So I know what a bad day in work feels like. Yeah. Patrick Mahomes is far and away enjoying himself more than I did that day.
Exactly, Neil. Exactly. Who's your defensive player of the year?
Don't
if it's
ask
not
stupid questions.
If it's not Khalil Mack, we need to go home.
Khalil Mack, who turned up 25 minutes before the season started. To quote the great Esposti, the Bears are a goddamn wrecking crew, and it all starts with the person who, I'm going to give him some credit, I'm going to give him a slight pass here, he should not know the playbook.
No, but it's almost like, if you were a defensive coordinator, like right now in the NFL, you'd be a little concerned, because basically Khalil Mack said defensive ends and outside, we don't need outside linebackers, we don't need a playbook. And now owners are going up to their head coaches and saying, why are we paying that dude $10 million there? Like, what's he doing? Because Khalil Mack turned up half an hour before, he didn't even have any boots, he lent them off his mate, and the next minute, we're leading the lead in sacks. So here's a stat on the Chicago Bears, which kind of sums up Khalil Mack, is that they lead the league in sacks and rank 32nd in blitz percentage. So they are getting to the quarterback. No fancy stuff. It's me against that guy, and that guy is not as good as me.
Who'd have thought that Vic Fangio, with a player like Khalil Mack, could have a unit performing at this high level? What was that statistic? In 4 games, they've sacked 7 different quarterbacks.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
And I made this point earlier, and so it was before they even hired Matt Nagy. I made it to Justin Twell. I said that back in 1981, the Bears fired a head coach, hired an offensive-minded one, but he got told, you're keeping this defensive staff.
Yeah.
I think we know what happened to that Bears team and what it became. Now, people are going to go completely over the top about what happened last week on offense. We should point out that in 3 previous games, Mitchell Trubisky had been mostly terrible. Lo and behold, he plays the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and rips them a new one. I'm terribly sorry, until he strings those performances together, that's the blip.
He's going to have back-to-back great games because he's going to destroy the bye this week as well.
He's going to rip the backside out the bye. I saw 3 games where he looked terrible. I saw him go up against a terrible team and look awesome. Defense, however, the Bears are an Aaron Rodgers miracle away from being 4-0.
Yeah.
So if your answer to this is anyone but Khalil Mack after 4 weeks, you've not been paying attention.
Like, and just to say, like, I picked Derwin James to be defensive rookie of the year. He's been unbelievable and all over the place, and he's a mile away from Khalil Mack. Just in case you weren't sure, the quarterbacks are Aaron Rodgers, DeShone Kizer, Wilson, Bradford, Rosen, Fitzmagic, Winston. Welcome to Bears football.
As Chris Wessling put it in his piece on his quarter poll MVP piece, the 1985 Bears sent quarterbacks to the hospital. The Bears send them to the bench.
Exactly. Well, that's in theory. That's the 2018 version, isn't it? Neil, who's your Sean McVay Coach of the Year award going to?
Andy Reid.
Wow. Okay, talk me through it.
A man who, at this stage of the game, should probably qualify for footballing dinosaur. You know, he was brought up in the West Coast system. He was strict adherence to the West Coast ideas. You know, you script your first 15 plays. You sometimes give up on the run, sometimes in favour of the pass.
Sometimes, as in all the time.
But in the last 2 years, this is not an NFL offense. This is an air raid system.
It's Big 12 football, Neil. For those who try and understand that, like for years, colleges or NFL have said that you can't get anything off the Big 12, and now all they do is steal the offense off them.
I just think in terms of a leopard changing your spots. And look at the track record of Andy Reid with quarterbacks. You've said it in the past. I've said it in the past as well. I have criticised Andy Reid relentlessly at times. But look what he's done with so many different quarterbacks. And now he's got someone who is, in my opinion, playing at an MVP level. Quick word though, ESPN. Showtime is shit. Stop calling him it.
You and everyone on Twitter has decided that that's accurate, and I don't disagree with you. I think it's Sean McVay. He is revolutionising offense in the NFL as we speak. As is, I guess, is Andy Reid. I think he's a genius, and I really hate the fact that he used to be my offensive coordinator. And it's one of them things where you're like, when you were like, oh, I'm not sure whether the reason we were bad in the red zone was our head coach or our offensive coordinator or our this or our that. What I do know is it wasn't our offensive coordinator.
Speaking, in a similar vein, you could argue that one area of expertise that Frank Reich and John DeFilippo had influence on with the Eagles last year was their red zone offense, and Eagles have not been good in the red zone this year. So tell me if Jay Gruden had just maybe, listened to Sean McVay a bit more, that maybe he'd still be, well, no, he probably wouldn't still be in Washington, but Washington might have won a few more of the big games.
Well, Frank Reich did that play for T.Y. Hilton against Washington in week 2. I didn't see much of that for Philadelphia against Tennessee.
No.
The only time, I think, Alshon scored in what was tantamount to a jump ball, wasn't it?
Not talking about the Eagles. So.
Oh, you're not talking? Okay, fair enough.
No.
So,
Not today.
Not today. So that's it from the news portion of the show. Let's go. Let's start talking fancy, Neil, and let's get a grip on who your fancy darling is this week.
Hello, darling.
It's a player who people were asking the question, what do we do with him? But there are signs of life for David Johnson. He's seen his percentage of total team touches rise in each of the last 4 weeks. Because maybe Mike, we're going to simplify the offense every damn year, has realised by simplifying offense means you give the playmaker the ball. He has scored a touchdown in 3 of his last 4 games, so 3 of the 4 games this season. The 49ers are allowing the 9th most fantasy points to running backs. as well as 35 receptions, 269 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. So David Johnson, as we know, is an excellent receiver, former wide receiver, converted to running back. I think David Johnson is going to have a big day. The Cardinals have got an excellent recent record against the 49ers. And as we've seen, Kyle Shanahan doesn't have an awful lot of success when Jimmy Garoppolo is not his quarterback.
Yeah, it's not been good on that situation. Yeah, the David Johnson signs of life. It's reaching the 15-minute mark in the Intercontinental title match, and the guy's been in the sleeper hole for a good 5 minutes. Ref's gone 1 arm, ref's gone 2 arm, 3 arm. Neil, it looks like it. No,
it's staying up.
Oh wait, it's staying up. He's managed to keep it up. Now can he make a fight back? We're about to find out. Not everyone can get that.
Excellent nerd analogy.
Thank you. Not everyone can get their arm up though, Neil. Some people are just, out for the count. Who's your fancy loser this week?
Well, it's a quarterback in the same division as David Johnson, and that's Russell Wilson. The Seahawks have not been great this year. I think there was an awful lot of people maybe expecting that they weren't going to be good, but thought, well, at least they'll have Russell Wilson. Well, he's not been too hot either. One of the great things that people love about Russell Wilson is the fact that he uses his legs, so that's an added appeal in fantasy circles. He hasn't topped 21 rushing yards in any of his 4 games this season. His passing yards have dropped every game this season. So from week 1 to week 4, they've gone down every single game. Plus, historically, he does not enjoy himself against the Rams, whether they play in St. Louis or Los Angeles. He averages 5 PPR points per game less than his career in other games, except... I'll start again. He averages 24 PPR points in 88 career games, not against the Rams, and just over 19 in 12 games against the Rams. His passing yards goes down from 232 a game to less than 220, and his rushing yards drops from 34 to 29. The offense is terrible. They've lost, I suppose, what you'd call it a big piece. Bear in mind that he had 8 receptions through the first 2 games of the season. That's Will Disley. Doug Baldwin's still finding his way back. The running game is an absolute joke because they wasted a first-round pick and are determined to put every other running back in Christendom in ahead of Rashard Penny, who they're now using on kick returns. As Josh Norris said, if you get the chance to use a first-round pick to improve your kick return game, you have to take it. If you can avoid it, I would stay clear of Russell Wilson this week.
I just looked at it and I know and there's a litany of things we got wrong, but I don't know how anybody thought that the Seattle Seahawks were going to be any good. I think Greg Rosenthal thought they were going to make the playoffs. I'm like, what are you like? That's a lot of reliance on Pistol Pete and John Schneider when they haven't really had anything to hang their hat on, considering they haven't really drafted anyone good in about 4 years.
Coaches can only help players so much, but my God, they can't half hinder them. And if you make your key offensive coordinator change of the season, you appoint Brian Schottenheimer, you're not allowed to be surprised when your offense is shit.
Yeah, true. Very true, Neil. Very true. Very true. That's fancy darling and fancy loser. Let's go DFS heavy and focus on our fancy teams of the week.
Mains and Dutt's Daily Fantasy Team of the Week.
Show me the money.
Big week, Neil. Week 5. Who's your quarterback?
My quarterback, $5,500, is Blake Bortles. He has alternated middling to excellent games this season, so he's actually, by that score, he's on pace for a bad game. However, they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who, as we've said, have no defence of which to speak. They play Arena League football. Chiefs are allowing the 5th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. Bortles has passed for at least 370 yards in 2 of his 4 games this season, plus he averages 4.5 rushing attempts and 33 yards on the ground. 5,500, Super Blake.
Super Blake. Super Blake. Super Blake. I have gone 5,200. Derek Carr for the Oakland Raiders against the Los Angeles Chargers. Raiders scored a lot of points last week, 45. Not terrible on offense throughout the year, especially in the scripted plays. Jay Gruden likes Carr. I wish that Jay Gruden would have told me that last week was the week that Amari Cooper was going to be good. That would have been really helpful for me. But there you go, one of them things. 5,200, I've gone with Derek Carr.
He has passed for at least 288 yards in all 4 games. He's passed for at least 340 yards in his last 2. The Raiders are 32nd in yards per completion. So they are essentially the quintessential dink and dunk offense. So that means there's plenty of opportunities for Carr. So he'll have the volume. It's just a question that the big play doesn't seem to be there.
Who's back one, Neil?
David Johnson, 6,300 for reasons previously alluded to.
If you think about it as well, like at the start of the year or last year, we were picking David Johnson for $9,000, right? Not last year, season before. He's now 6,300. That's a massive bargain, right? Like,
it's a massive bargain.
Unbelievable.
But give him, I'd say, a couple more weeks, I think, on his current trajectory, and the market will correct. And I think DraftKings, he'll be back up around the 8,000 mark.
My running back one is Melvin Gordon. He's obviously on the other side of the Oakland versus LA Chargers debate. He is 8,600. Raiders can't stop the run, and Gordon is heavily involved in this offense right now.
Well, Gordon leads the AFC with 475 yards from scrimmage. 18.5% of his carries have gone for 10 yards or more. He has scored a touchdown in his last 3 games and has eclipsed 100 yards from scrimmage in 4 of his last 5 home games. I think Melvin Gordon is getting slightly lost in the shuffle because Todd Gurley's so good, Alvin Kamara's so good, whereas we shouldn't forget how good Melvin Gordon has been this season, especially as he is seriously competing with Austin Eckler for how good they are as a duo.
Yeah. Also, you seem to suggest that Melvin Gordon plays home games for LA.
Sorry.
Weird. Running back 2, Neil.
Running back 2, 4,800 is Philip Lindsay. He's had at least 12 rushing attempts in the 3 games he's finished. Obviously, he left one of them early because he decided to start throwing hands. He has had a 24% opportunity share when the Broncos have been leading. I expect them to be leading on Sunday. They're playing the Jets. The Broncos, I didn't realise until it was pointed out to me how piss poor Case Keenum has been since week 1 when he was adequate. He's been terrible since. He hasn't thrown a touchdown since week 1, but they were absolutely gashing the Chiefs on the ground, of which Jason Modern Man Witten points out, saying, yep, this offense starts and ends with the ground game. Go away. But yeah, I think Philip Lindsay, for reasons that become clear, I've had to maybe scrimp a bit on my second running back here. But he's not a terrible option. He's been their best running back, even though they are a committee. So I like Philip Lindsay here. Yeah.
On mine, speaking of AFC West teams that can't stop the run, and Neil just mentioned the Kansas City Chiefs, I've gone for TJ Yeldon. Neil may like his usage when Blake Bortles dumps it off to TJ, and I'll take those points and the runs he'll get. He's 5,600.
Chiefs are allowing the most fantasy points to running backs this season. Yeldon had 100 yards from scrimmage last week and has had at least 65 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown in 2 of his last 3 road games. The Chiefs are allowing, per game, 201.5 yards from scrimmage to running backs. That's the second most in the league. Leonard Fournette will not be playing because who knew hamstring injuries would linger. So Yeldon's a good bet to get the majority of the backfield work. And he's been quite efficient, as we say. He's not been terrible. He's not blown the doors off anyone. I think he realises that he's not getting a new contract with the Jaguars, so he's making the most of his chances for his audition for 2019.
Just to double check, Neil. So the Chiefs are 4-0, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just said they concede 201 yards a game on the ground.
Not on the ground, two running backs.
Earlier in the show, you suggested that they give up the most air yards and also the most yards after catch. How?
This is why Andy Reid is Coach of the Year.
It could well be, Neil. It could well be. Who's your wide receiver one? I assume he's expensive.
He is expensive. 9,100. It's Antonio Brown. Brown has not been good this season and has been the second best wide receiver on the Steelers. However, he's still second in the league in targets. The Falcons are allowed 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers and have given up big games to wide receivers already this season. It's borderline tragic watching the Falcons lose another key defensive player week after week after week after week, especially when you consider how good Matt Ryan is playing. However, bollocks to that. I want Antonio Brown to feast.
I think, Neil, this is where you look and think that we were talking about the Seattle Seahawks before we got into Atlanta now. Both of those teams have plays in Super Bowls that they really wish they could have back because teams have windows and Seattle's is short and Atlanta's is closing fast.
It's close. It's the footballing equivalent of Indy going through the collapsing door, reaching back to get his hat. That's That's how fast this is going down. Yeah.
My wide receiver one is Stephon Diggs, 7,000. Minnesota playing Philadelphia. Corey Davis came alive against the Philadelphia Eagles secondary. I like the front seven, although it's not getting as much pressure as it was last year, and because it's not getting as much pressure as last year, we're reminded that most of the Eagles' secondary, with the exception of Malcolm Jenkins, are massive pieces of burnt toast.
Well, Diggs is going to play on the outside, obviously, so he's going to avoid the best of the cornerbacks. That's Sidney Jones. So Jones against Phelan is going to be a great matchup to watch. Stephon Diggs, in his last 3 games, has had 13, 10 and 15 targets. He had 11 receptions last week. He has scored 6 touchdowns in his last 7 games. And as you've alluded to, the Eagles are allowing the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers.
Who's your wide receiver 2, Neil?
The real Showtime, Golden Tate, 6,700. Your favourite player, not wearing Washington colours.
If you could bottle Golden Tate's arrogance and sell it, you'd be a billionaire. As twice while heading into the end zone against Dallas, he basically stopped, turned round, and gave all of Dallas the finger. Magnificent.
In his last 3 games against the Packers, he's averaged 6.7 receptions and 98 yards per game. He's had at least 6 receptions and 69 nice yards in every game this season. And the Packers have been somewhat susceptible to slot receivers. So we know that Tate isn't playing in 2 wide receiver sets. That's Golladay and Jones. But he is seeing the field a ton. And when he's on the field, he's producing.
My wide receiver 2 is in the same game as wide receiver 1, Minnesota at Philadelphia. Alshon Jeffrey, fit, firing, scoring a touchdown, and back to a bit of bromance with Carson Wentz. He's 6,200, and the vaunted Minnesota defense is struggling big time at the start of the season. And also, I don't know if you know, but they struggled pretty badly against Philadelphia in the last time they played them.
Well, that's one huge factor in Jeffrey's favour, is that some people may say, well, Jeffrey's coming back, it's only his 2nd game, he's going to go into Xavier Rhodes. Yeah, he went 85 yards and 2 touchdowns against Xavier Rhodes in the NFC Championship game. Obviously, Jeffrey was his first game back. Suddenly it was his first 100-yard receiving game as an Eagle. In his last 8 games, regular season games against the Vikings, he has 46 receptions for 702 yards and 8 touchdowns, and the Vikings are currently allowing the 10th most fantasy points to wide receivers, so not a terrible pick. Hopefully, as an Eagles fan, he can continue to link up well with Carson Wentz because Nelson Aguilar has been an absolute disaster this season. Aguilar has the 12th most targets of all wide receivers and is wide receiver 38 in PPR points.
Something not right.
Volume does not beget efficiency, I'm afraid.
Who's your wide receiver 3, Neil?
Wide receiver 3 is John Brown. It's 5,600. Baltimore Ravens at the Cleveland Browns. John Brown, his average depth of target is 22.1 yards. Leads all wide receivers who've seen at least 30 targets. 17 of his 30 targets have been at least 15 yards downfield. And just to show that he's not a one-trick pony, he leads the Ravens with 4 red zone targets. The Browns, as good as they've been on defence from an opportunistic point of view, they do have a lot of takeaways. They have been burnt at times, and they did give up a ton of points last week. So Brown and Flacco have got something going on.
So, it's amazing what happens when some people are pushed and they respond in kind. Joe Flacco, quarterback drafted in the first round, has responded. Eli Manning had a quarterback. Oh no, they drafted a running back, and he's absolutely tosh.
Yeah, he is. Is it painful to watch? It's hilarious to watch how bad Eli is every single week. We're 4 weeks in, but I think we're already on pace for a record crop of Eli faces this year.
I mean, it's not like he's got a load of talented players around him. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we play a game of Saquon Barkley and Odell Beckham Jr., like the Saints, like they've got Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas and a over 39-year-old quarterback. It's all right for them.
Odell Beckham is 6th in the league in targets among wide receivers and is wide receiver 22 in PPR points because his average depth of target. So about John Brown's is 22.1 yards. Odell Beckham's is about 9.
It's awful. My wide receiver 3 is Mohamed Sanu. He's playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. Lots of love for Calvin Ridley after I found him again for week 3. Julio's still Julio, but never gets in the end zone. Mohamed Sanu is probably still wide receiver 2, especially when it gets to the red zone.
Steelers are allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. Over his last 2 weeks, Sanu has caught 10 of his 16 targets, and the Steelers allowed 6 receptions on 6 targets for 66 yards and a touchdown to the slot on Sunday.
Yummy. Who's your tight end, Neil?
Well, as JJ Jackie Reason points out this week, if your tight end's breathing, stick him in. I've gone with Vance McDonald. So I think we're seeing a pattern in the Steelers Falcons game.
Play them all. Play all your players.
If you've got, smoke them if you've got them. Vance McDonald has gone 9 receptions for 174 yards, a touchdown, and the soul of Chris Conte in the last 2 weeks. I say the Falcons are just losing player after player up the middle of their defence. So Vance McDonald, 3,700. From a tight end streaming point of view, in regular season, he's still available in just under half of all ESPN leagues. So in what has been a horrific year for tight ends, I mean, we know it's always a dumpster fire. People thought maybe this year there was hope. There was some bright new stars emerging at the spot. Yeah, but they're not being used. And even if they are, they're not producing. So Vance McDonald, plug him in. Don't feel good about it. But let's just get through this.
My tight end is Austin Seferian-Jenkins. It was Austin Hooper in the other side, but Neil taught me down from the garbage ledge. So it's Austin Seferian-Jenkins, Jacksonville at KC. I mean, we've just gone through all the stats related to how bad KC are against everybody on the other side's offense. So ASJ hopefully gets fed by Blake Bortles and gets me some points.
Yeah, the Chiefs are allowing the 4th most fancy points to tight ends, and while they didn't exactly let him rip them apart, they couldn't cover Jeff Hyman last week. Exactly. The look on your face, who the hell is Jeff Hyman? ASJ is a much better athletic specimen than Jeff Hyman. So, it's as you said, he only has about 4 receptions per game or 4 targets per game, but it's 4 targets every game. So at least there's a small base level of a floor for ASJ in what I say is a dagger to my brand this season.
Who's your flex option, Neil?
My flex option, one of the greatest names in the NFL, is Kiki Kuti of the Houston Texans. He's 4,200. He had 11 receptions on 15 targets last week for the Colts against for the Texans against the Colts. That is the most receptions by any player on his debut in NFL history. It broke Anquan Bolden's record of 10, which he set back in 2003. Now, Kiki Kuti, saw 36% of the targets last week. He was being targeted when Fuller was healthy and DeAndre Hopkins was on the field healthy as well. So this wasn't a desperation thing. They were getting him the ball. So he's got profiles to get some good volume, because outside of Hopkins and Fuller, the Texans don't really have an awful lot of people to throw to. And as good as they've been this season, and they have been quite solid, this is still the Dallas Cowboys defense.
Yeah, my flex is Corey Davis, who, as I mentioned earlier, is alive and kicking and playing the Buffalo Bills. He's 6,400. He's Marcus Mariota's favourite target. And Marcus Mariota's hand seems to now be attached to the rest of his body again, which is excellent news for all Titans fans and for my DFS team.
9 for 161 and a touchdown last week. Career highs in catches and yards. First Titan with 150 yards and a touchdown since Jared Cook in 2011. He also leads the league in targets per pass route run, or as Player Profile calls it, hog rate, at 31.5%. So he is, their passing game goes through Corey Davis.
Who's your defence and special teams, Neil?
Who are the Buffalo Bills playing this week?
They are playing the Tennessee Titans.
Tennessee Titans. The Buffalo Bills, on offense, are 32nd in yards gained on first down, 32nd on yards needed on third down, and 32nd on third down conversion rate. They've taken 21 sacks, which is the most by any team through 3 weeks since the 2007 Detroit Lions. The Titans have been solid on defence. They've got some nice pieces. Obviously, Jarrell Casey, perennially underrated. Harold Landry is a one-man wrecking crew all by himself. Got Brian Orakpo. We know about him, obviously, from his time with Washington. They've not allowed a quarterback to finish higher than quarterback 15 this season. And Josh Allen's thrown 4 interceptions against 2 touchdowns. He, as efficient as he was against the Vikings, he was comedically bad against the Packers.
Yeah, if you were concerned about Minnesota's performance against the Bills and against the Rams, you were probably even more concerned by how the Bills played against the Packers the week after, if you were a Minnesota Vikings fan, because you were like, that's what we should have done. And we didn't, and now we've lost the game on the Packers against the same team. Not good. I've also got the Titans. I think it's a no-brainer. Titans are sneaky good,
but fun, because the last time they were sneaky good, they were boring. But this is a good. It's a with Mariota fit, which he seems to be, with Matt LaFleur, who's been coached by Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. They're a bit more inventive of what they do on offense, and they're not just going to say, okay, let's take the big running back and smash him into the line every time on first down. You don't have to do that. You're all allowed to be creative.
Yeah,
and it is nice that the pedants are being chased out of the league.
Correct.
I mean, we still got
bye Luddites. Bye.
Yeah, as Greg Rosedale said. I think you saw to Nat Coombs on Nat's pod. That Seahawks Cardinals game last week wouldn't have looked out of place in 1973. But what the Rams and Vikings were playing on Thursday night was 2018 football, That's what people want to watch. Now, I know it's a pisser if you're a defensive player, and I like defensive football to an extent, but I don't like boring coaches coaching defensively to set up 42-year-old field goal kickers to try and win a game. Show some balls.
Correct, Neil. Let's recap. Who's your quarterback?
Blake Bortles.
I've got Derek Carr, running back 1.
David Johnson.
I've got Melvin Gordon, running back 2.
Philip Lindsay.
I've got TJ Yeldon, who's your wide receiver 1.
Antonio Brown.
Mine is Stephon Diggs, who's your wide receiver 2.
Golden Tate.
I've got Alshon Jeffrey, wide receiver 3.
Smokey John Brown.
I've got Mohamed Sanu, tight end.
Everybody Van Snell McDonald.
I've got ASJ, who's your flex.
Kiki Kuti.
I've got Corey Davis, who's your defense and special teams.
The Tennessee Titans.
I've got the Titans as well, Neil. That's it for the show, Neil. Where can people catch you? And please extol the virtues of your latest foray into the world of Yahoo.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm on the Twitter machine at ndutton13. My 2 goal line game level similarity projection articles are already out on RotoViz for quarterbacks and tight ends. I know tight ends is a mess, but let this article guide you, especially if you're going to have to stream this week. My wide receiver usage report will be out soon. I take a look at the wide receivers who got double-digit targets last week, and I have a look at the season so far for some of the bigger names and what they can expect to do moving forward. And as my esteemed colleague alluded to, my latest offering for Yahoo takes a look at 3 under-the-radar slot wide receivers who you may want to think about picking up. They're widely available, in Yahoo leagues, and we have mentioned one of them already this week in one of our teams of the week. But I'm not going to tell you who. You'll have to read it, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is what they call a tease.
It is, Neil. It is. I am at Mandy 7. If you fancy playing DFS against me, I am Mandy 7 on DraftKings. We will be back next week. More fun, more fancy. These top guys are out.